I'm Reese. I was 11 days from closing on my first home when my lender called to tell me my credit score had dropped 173 points overnight. I remember exactly where I was standing, the break room at work, microwave humming, waiting for my lunch to heat up. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick up. The loan officer's voice was careful in that way people get when they're delivering bad news to someone who doesn't know it's coming yet. "We're seeing a significant change on your report," she said. "We'll need to pause the process until we understand what happened." I drove home on autopilot. I don't remember the traffic. I don't remember parking. I just remember sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, logged into annualcreditreport.com, watching the screen load with my heart somewhere up near my throat. There it was, a home equity line of credit, $47,000, opened 8 months ago on a property in my name. Or rather, a property where my name sat quietly on a co-ownership document I'd signed 6 years earlier, back when my father said he needed someone he could trust on the paperwork, and I was young enough to believe that being needed was the same as being loved. I didn't call him that night. I just sat there, the glow of the screen turning everything in my apartment a cold shade of blue, and I read the transaction history line by line: building materials, an equipment lease, a commercial refrigeration unit, a logo design service, a restaurant licensing fee. A restaurant. My brother had been talking about opening a restaurant for as long as I could remember. It was always the dream, always almost happening, always waiting on one more thing to fall into place. And apparently, 8 months ago, the one thing that fell into place was my name on a deed I'd forgotten I'd ever signed. I closed the laptop. I opened it again. I made tea I didn't drink. I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the apartment I'd been trying to leave for 2 years, saving every extra dollar, skipping vacations, brown bagging lunch every single day, and I thought about the house I was supposed to own in 11 days. The small blue Craftsman in East Nashville, with the porch I'd already mentally furnished. The yard I'd started gardening in my head. The key I hadn't touched yet but had already imagined the weight of. I called my father the next morning. I waited until I was calm or close to it. He picked up after 2 rings. I heard the television in the background, the same morning news program he'd watched every day of my life. "There's a home equity line of credit on the Briarwood property," I said. I kept my voice flat. $47,000, I didn't authorize it. There was a pause, not a shocked pause, a calculating one. "Your brother needed startup capital," he said. "The bank wasn't going to touch him without collateral. You know how it is." I didn't speak right away. I needed a second to absorb the casualness of it. "You used my name without asking me." "You would have said yes." His tone shifted then, not apologetic, just faintly impatient, like I was complicating something simple. "You always help when it matters. This was just faster." In the background, I heard my mother say something I couldn't make out, and then she laughed, short and light, and my father said, "She'll understand," before the line went quiet between us. I understood all right. I just understood something different than what he meant. I drove into work. I sat through 2 meetings and answered 14 emails. I don't remember any of it. What I remember is opening a new spreadsheet at 4:47 in the afternoon and typing a title at the top, what they borrowed without asking. It took me until midnight to fill it in. The HELOC was the headline, but it wasn't the whole story. I started digging through 3 years of bank statements, something I'd never done carefully enough because I trusted the people who had partial access to things. During a hard stretch 4 years ago, my parents had needed to be added to one of my accounts temporarily. It was supposed to last 6 weeks. I'd never removed them. The auto-pay on my parents' car insurance had been running out of my checking account for 31 months, small enough that I'd assumed it was one of my own subscriptions, $94 a month. I did the math twice because I didn't believe it the first time, $2,914. I found a gym membership for a gym 2 states away from me. I found streaming services. I found a recurring charge to a meal kit company that I had definitely never signed up for, going to an address in Brentwood where my brother lived with his wife. I made coffee. I kept going. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from my brother. I almost didn't listen, but the fact that it came in at that hour made me press play. He hadn't meant to send it to me. I could tell because I could hear him mid-conversation with someone, laughing, the ambient noise of what sounded like a bar or a busy kitchen. "She doesn't even look at her credit," he was saying. "I told Dad she's too busy to notice. She's got a good score and she never uses it, so what's the harm? By the time the place is profitable, we'll pay it down, and she won't even know it happened." Someone said something I couldn't hear clearly. My brother laughed again. She'd make it weird, you know how she gets. I played it back once, then I set my phone face down on the table and didn't move for a long time. She'd make it weird. I thought about every family dinner where I'd quietly paid for more than my share. Every time my father called with a problem, and I solved it before he finished the sentence. The year my mother's transmission blew, and I didn't think twice about covering it. The way my name had been, for my entire adult life, synonymous in my family with the phrase "she'll handle it." Not because I was strong, because I was available, because I had never once said no clearly enough for them to hear it. I wasn't angry, not the hot kind. What I felt was something colder and more specific, the feeling of a person who has just seen a map of a place she thought she knew, and realizes every landmark she trusted was drawn wrong. My aunt called me 2 days later, my father's sister, the quiet one, the one who usually stayed out of things. She texted first, "Can we talk? Not family stuff, just you and me." We met at a coffee shop near her office. She sat across from me with her hands wrapped around a paper cup, and she slid her phone across the table without saying anything. It was a screenshot of a family group text, the kind I'd been removed from 2 years ago after an argument no one ever fully addressed. My mother had written, "Just don't tell Reese about the HELOC until after closing. If she buys the house first, she won't be able to stop the process. By then it'll just be water under the bridge." My brother had responded with a thumbs up emoji. My father, "Good thinking." My aunt had typed back, "I don't think this is right." No one responded to her. I stared at that screenshot for a long time. My aunt said, "I saved it when I saw it. I didn't know what to do with it. I'm sorry I didn't call you sooner." I handed her phone back. "Thank you for calling me at all." When I got home, I sat at my desk and opened a folder I'd labelled evidence. The voicemail was already in there. Now I added the screenshot. I sat back and looked at what I'd built in 72 hours. A case. A clear, documented, time-stamped case. I called my mortgage lender that afternoon and told her the situation. She was kind about it. She was also clear. With the HELOC on the property and the change to my debt-to-income ratio, the loan couldn't proceed. Not in 11 days. Probably not in any time frame she could realistically offer me right now. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. What happened instead was that I opened a new browser tab and searched for the name of the attorney I'd seen recommended in a local Facebook group 2 years ago. Someone who handled financial fraud cases. I found the firm. I called. I got an appointment for the following Tuesday. Then I pulled up my banking dashboard and started making changes. I removed my parents from the joint account. I revoked every shared access I'd ever granted, one by one, like pulling weeds. Deliberate, unhurried, getting the roots. I cancelled the car insurance autopay. I cancelled the meal kit service and the gym membership and 3 streaming subscriptions that hadn't been mine. My phone lit up almost immediately. A text from my mother, "Netflix isn't working." I stared at it for a moment, then I set the phone down and kept going. The next morning, my brother posted on Instagram. I saw it because a friend sent it to me with a string of question marks. He was standing in his half-finished restaurant, arms spread wide, grinning at the camera. The caption read, "Built this thing from the ground up. Nobody gave us anything. Just hard work and believing in the dream. Grand opening soon." 43 likes, 7 comments. My mother had written, "So proud of you, baby, you did it." I saved the post, I saved my mother's comment. I added them both to the evidence folder. My attorney was a small woman with reading glasses pushed up on her head and a habit of writing notes in green ink. She listened to everything I said without interrupting. When I finished, she asked 2 clarifying questions, then folded her hands on the desk. "The HELOC is the most actionable issue," she said. "You have a co-ownership document but no record of authorizing the line of credit. The voicemail is useful, the screenshot is better. I'd like to contact the lender directly. What does this do to the property?" She paused. "That's the harder conversation. Untangling your name from the Briarwood deed, especially with an active line of credit, is a process. It won't be fast." I nodded. I already knew. I'd already grieved the blue Craftsman house in the 2 days since I lost it. I'd grieved the porch in the yard and the key I never touched. I'd sat with that loss and let it be as heavy as it actually was, instead of carrying it quietly the way I had always carried everything. "Let's start the process," I said. That evening, I drove past the Briarwood property, the house my father owned, where my name sat on a deed like a signature I'd scribbled without reading the fine print. I sat in my car across the street for a few minutes. The lights were on inside. I could see the shape of my parents moving through the kitchen, Everything looked ordinary from the outside. It usually does. I drove home. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. I filed a dispute with all 3 credit bureaus. My attorney sent a formal letter to the HELOC lender flagging the unauthorized nature of the draw. I provided my documentation, the co-ownership agreement, the dates, the transaction history, the voicemail, the screenshot, everything clean and organized and impossible to misread. My father called 4 times. I let them all go to voicemail. My mother sent a text that said, "Your brother is devastated. You're going to destroy what he's built." I read it. I didn't respond. My brother's wife sent a long message that started with, "I understand you're upset," and ended with, "Family is forever, even when it's hard." I didn't respond to that either. Then my aunt texted, "They're saying you had a breakdown and you're trying to ruin the business out of jealousy. I want you to know I'm not repeating it." I called her back. We talked for an hour. She was the only person in my family who asked how I was doing before telling me what anyone else thought. 3 weeks after I lost the house, my father showed up at my apartment. He buzzed from the lobby and I almost didn't let him up. But I did because there was something I wanted to say, and I wanted to say it to his face. He came in holding his coat over his arm, like he was visiting someone else's office. He looked around my apartment the way he always did, a little assessing, a little disappointed. The look of a man who believed his children's spaces should reflect better on him. "This could have been handled privately," he said, "within the family." "It was handled privately," I said. "For 8 months, while you were drawing down on a credit line in my name, it was very private. I just wasn't included in the privacy." He sat down without being invited. "I thought you'd understand once you saw the restaurant was working. You'd see we did the right thing." The right thing would have been asking me. "You would have said no." I looked at him. Yes, I would have. He seemed surprised by that, like the possibility had genuinely not occurred to him, that I had opinions about my own credit, my own financial future, my own name, that my yes or no was something that belonged to me. "We raised you to be generous," he said. "You raised me to be useful," I said. "Those aren't the same thing." He left 20 minutes later without the conversation going where he'd expected it to. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said true things until there was nothing left to say, and then I stood at the door while he walked out. The legal process took 5 months. At the end of it, my name was off the Briarwood deed. The HELOC lender agreed to flag the draw as disputed pending investigation. My credit score started its slow climb back. I got a letter from my attorney that used the phrase "full financial disassociation," and I read it 4 times. My brother's restaurant opened in the spring. I know because my aunt mentioned it once carefully. The way you mention something you're not sure the other person wants to hear. She asked if I was okay. "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it in a way I hadn't meant much of anything for a long time. I started looking at apartments with in-unit laundry and good light, small manageable mine. I rebuilt my savings plan from scratch, a new spreadsheet, my own numbers, my own timeline. I learned things about my own finances that I should have known years earlier. How to read a credit report, what a deed of trust actually means before you sign one, how to set up account alerts so that nothing moves without my knowledge. I moved in April, a 1-bedroom in a building with a rooftop garden and a landlord who responded to emails within 24 hours. I painted the living room a shade of warm terracotta that my mother had always said would look cheap. It looked beautiful. A woman I'd worked with for 3 years sent me a bottle of wine with a card that said, "To your first space that's really yours." I sat on my living room floor that first evening with a glass of it, and no furniture yet, just boxes and the sound of the city coming through the cracked window, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not triumph, not relief exactly, something quieter, the feeling of a person who has stopped carrying someone else's weight and is only now discovering how heavy it was. I don't know what my family says about me now. My aunt passes along what she thinks I need to know and leaves out the rest, and I'm grateful for both things. My father sent a card at Christmas. Just a card, no note, his handwriting on the envelope. I put it in the recycling without opening it, not with anger, just with the steady clarity of someone who has gotten very precise about what she lets into her life. I published a short essay that winter, something personal, something honest, just a few hundred words on a personal finance blog about what happens when family members access your credit without consent and what steps to take if it happens to you. 3 people I didn't know emailed me afterward. One of them said, "I thought I was the only one." Another said, "My sister did something similar, and I never had language for it until I read this." I wrote back to both of them. What I know now, having been on the other side of it, is that the people who take from you without asking don't think of it as taking. They think of you as a shared resource, a well they've always drawn from, something that replenishes itself quietly without requiring acknowledgement. They're not wrong that you replenished. They're only wrong about why. You replenished because you were trying to earn something that was never actually on offer. A seat at the table that was already set without a place for you. You can stop trying to earn it without hating them. That was the thing nobody told me. I thought walking away had to look like rage or vengeance or a final dramatic confrontation, but it didn't. It looked like a green attorney letter and a revoked autopay, and a woman sitting on her own floor in a freshly painted room, drinking wine by herself and feeling, for the first time in years, like the money in her account and the name on her lease and the key in her hand all belong to the same person. If you've been the one who always picks up the phone, always covers the gap, always says yes before anyone finishes asking, I want you to know there is a version of your life where that stops being true. Not because you became someone different, because you finally became someone whole. And if this story felt like something you've lived, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you would have done. I want to hear from you, because this isn't the only story I have to tell, and it helps to know I'm not telling them alone.